Russian journalists working for Russian state media are now openly warning Putin about fall of his regime.
Tensions are ratcheting up domestically for Russia now, to the point that state-owned news media companies even have people on air calling for Putin's resignation. While this has happened before, this is all caused by a growing number of issues that are increasing, not lessening, as time goes on, leaving many to question if this is the big one that finally causes Putin to actually resign. There are hints it might even be on the horizon. Casualties last month reached the 1 million mark for the Russian side in this conflict officially, and are in reality are thought to have exceeded this number. Many of those soldiers had families that cared for them, and as a result, they have lost their children or partners. As a result of this, on May 9th, a protest occurred in Russia in which women lined the streets sobbing at the losses they had incurred. This is without a doubt a block of Russian voters that will back a Putin resignation and an end to the war in general. In response to the Ukraine war, Russia invoked the wrath of the majority of the world, taking on the brunt of global sanctions that have tanked its economy. This has led to harsh conditions in the country and also ruined many people's livelihoods. They were promised a swift victory, and as of yet, their victory has been anything but. Worse, culturally, Russia has been excluded by many parts of the world, and at times even unfairly. Its citizens have been the target of massive hatred where once they found acceptance, such as examples of musicians being cancelled and booed internationally, affecting their own livelihoods. It has also done damage to the elites in the country's bottom lines, as the war has raged for so long and assets have been seized by governments outside of Russia as compensation and punishments on behalf of Ukraine. The most critical point recently that has really hit Russia this year, and is the primary contributing factor to the recent calls of resignation from Putin, are the large-scale fuel shortages, hitting the country so badly that it's become a major breaking point. Shortages have become extremely widespread and have gradually increased as the war has gone on. It has even begun to affect Russian elites further, which is driving them to anger. The shortages are so bad that they are beginning to reach COVID-19 shortage levels, which, while the rest of the world has largely recovered, would be a drastic emergency for Russian national interests. Longtime veterans and the strongest Russian supporters of the state are saying that if they don't solve the fuel crisis, it could be the end of the entire nation. That is why it's even starting to spill out into media companies that are mostly owned by the state. This is more than just a setback or an issue. This is now a major crisis that, if not solved, and soon, could be the final nail in the coffin for all of Russia, and by extension, Putin as well. In February and March of 2014, Russia entered Crimea, and though a heavily contested vote by all sides, the Russians claimed Western forces were shooting pro-Russian people. Western powers accused the vote of being fraudulent. Crimea would eventually come into the hands of Russia if the Russian story of events is to be believed. The story is that they voted to join Russia and entered the country to support those efforts, as the citizens missed the peace and stability that the Soviet Union of the previous decades had awarded to them. However, now, with the fuel shortages and the general state of Russia, the issues that they were supposedly fighting against 11 years ago today have returned under Russia. The Crimea situation is so bad that 50% of gas stations are without fuel, leading toward unrest and anger. If this boils over, this could end up causing a complete reversal, a possible call to Ukrainian statehood. While in some ways this is a long shot, Crimea has been on Ukraine's radar for wanting to be recaptured for quite some time, and has been a key issue and the catalyst prior to the invasions of 2022. The fuel shortages are raising gas prices that were already heavily inflated due to the sanctions on the country as well. When fuel prices go up, everything that requires that fuel, including devices used to make food for example, also goes up. This creates a domino effect that will continue to worsen the economy. This indeed continues to worsen the Russian situation immensely and threatens their existence and the everyday lives of its citizens. The reason behind the fuel shortages is due to strategic strikes by Ukraine on key Russian Russian oil facilities, the majority of which were conducted by drone strikes. Due to their ease of creation and their damage potential, those weapons are effective and easy to use to do long-term major damage to Russia, and so far these efforts have only worsened to the fever pitch it has now reached. A petition was created in 2022 by municipal deputies in the Russian district of Lomonosky, stating that Putin must resign, and this would be the peaceful solution for him to remove himself from the issues that the citizens have with the government. The response were threats of legal action and even jail sentences should anyone sign it. 3 years later, Putin has not resigned despite situations like this happening before. In the Lipetsk region, while Russia has always had this issue, it is now actively fining people who talk about, share videos, or pictures of oil refineries in dire straits. This is leading toward resentment of the government itself from Russian citizens, which is growing calls for Putin's resignation. Worse, with each violation a citizen commits, the fines go up, a major crackdown. Russia cites its reasoning to be that of protection from drone attacks from Ukraine. This proves the primary reason the refineries are in dire straits. The main way that Russia has survived the war with Ukraine in the wake of the sanctions is by giving major exports to countries across the globe. Long-term buyers such as China and India keep the country afloat as a result. However, with these growing shortages, Russia is stuck between a rock and a hard place, as the nation's citizens are now running out of oil for its own power supply domestically. Russia is desperate for finances, as it's the only way its economy can be kept in check. However, at the same time, it is now running out of fuel in general. This likely can and will lead to citizenry revolts due to worsening conditions on the domestic front and as bad optics for the nation, given the image of prioritizing other nations as well as the war machine itself over the interests of the Russian people. Russia has banned exports as a result of the fuel shortage, which will likely cause further damage to its economy as a whole. It could also result in the nation pushing further forward into the war as it's running out of options. Putin recently promised that instead of raising taxes, they would instead shift toward increasing production from their oil refineries. It can be argued that Ukraine paid attention to this, which is why it has done massive damage to them all of a sudden, crippling their economic situation. This has resulted in taxes being raised anyway now. Taxes are never popular, but with the increase and the appearance of a broken promise, citizens will continue to get angry and will likely fuel demands for Putin's resignation. Dmitry Kozak has served in Russia as its chief of staff for over a decade. While he opposed the invasion of Ukraine for many years, he has remained loyal. However, as of September 18th of this year, he penned his resignation and it was accepted by President Putin. This is a major leader stepping down and signals that change is coming. Whatever form that takes, however, is yet to be seen. With all this going on by coincidence or due to mounting pressure, Putin is having secret meetings with his government and drawing up plans for his successor. Putin emphasized that he wants a veteran of the Ukrainian war to take over and end up replacing him one day. Moreover, he believes that they will be key to either ending the war and increasing nationalistic interest within the country itself, something he feels is key and important for the continued existence of their nation. He also believes that they have proven their ultimate loyalty to the nation itself and, as a result, deserve to fill the positions as well. In 2021, a bill was signed into law by President Putin that would remove the two-term presidential limits and allow him to potentially hold office until 2036. So unless Putin willingly resigned, they could let his term lapse in 2036 or simply extend it again. Meaning the choices are for Putin to resign or die, and however that death would occur, old age, natural causes, or revolt, to oust him. This is why many people are begging for resignations. It is a warning bell not just to the country, but to Putin himself that this would be his only way out with his life. While many in Russia are angry at Putin for the situation Russia is in, a replacement could have the opposite effect of what those angry with Russia desire, with Putin signaling at making moves to usher in his replacement as a Ukrainian war veteran veteran, a replacement could be more militaristic than even Putin himself. Moreover, there are risks of lack of desire for peace against an enemy not yet defeated. What the Russian people calling for Putin's resignation really want is an end, one way or another, to the Ukrainian war. This could end in the form of peace or soon lead to a conclusive, intense battle in the days ahead, as Russia is starting to become more and more desperate due to the prolonged conflict. If Russia cannot sustain itself in the war, then it might seek to end it sooner rather than later. Russia is a nuclear-powered country, and while nukes are likely off the table in terms of escalation, should Russia in general opt for a destroy-everything approach soon, Ukraine could very well cease to exist. Time will tell what occurs as a result of all this, and we will continue to keep you updated here on what continues to change. We could very well be approaching a massive situation in the months ahead. Winter is coming. A lack of fuel now at a crucial time will not be allowed to stay the status quo.